I think we can go ahead and get started. To my wonderful, wonderful panelists, thank you guys so much for being here. Would you guys mind going around? We can start with you, just introducing yourself, telling us what you're majoring in, what your plans are when you graduate, fun facts, hope streams, all that good stuff.
So hi everyone, my name is Rich. I am in the Psychological and Brain Sciences program. I am an incoming third year.
Need a more louder, please.
Okay. And I study racial microaggressions and the different types of isms. So heterosexism, classism, and its correlates to health and mental health.
That's very cool. Man, I love being in school. Hi, I'm Sage, they, he. I was formerly in the Masters of Science Data Analytics program, but actually I just transferred into the MS Educational Psychology, Quantitative Methods and Research focus. And so a bit about me, first gen student, queer, neurodiverse, and yeah, I've just finished my first year of grad school and I will be applying to PhD programs in September.
Fun fact, Sage was RGA, and because they're so awesome, they got a new position in the education department. I'm not bitter at it at all. Nicole,
Yes.
please.
Hi friends, my name is Nicole Thomas. I'm currently a PhD student in educational psychology, so hi friends.
Hey!
I received my bachelor's from UNLV in biology, my master's in curriculum and instruction, just finished my coursework. I'm in the middle of writing my dissertation, all a fun time. Thanks, yeah. I'm currently working on systems science, so basically how to teach biology to students through a complex systems lens, and how we could get teachers to address misconceptions in the classroom, things like that. So very science education focused, all things like that.
Very cool, thank you. All right, guys, so as far as your initial experience goes, what was one of the biggest challenges you faced when you were transitioning to your grad program, and what did you do to overcome it?
So one of my biggest challenges was adjusting. I've been to Vegas a few times as a tourist, and now that I'm here, it's a completely different experience. And so when I transitioned from my master's program to my PhD program, it was finding that support system again, because most of my support system was back home. And because of that, I think I would encourage you all to engage in service and also build community with your cohort and people above and below your cohort.
I moved here 2 years ago from the Bay Area, and it was a very big culture shock. And so only, moving in with my partner and he being the, the one kind of tether that I had to this place. And so really actually kind of on a whim, I applied to grad school here, and I was like, if I get in, I get in, that's great. If I don't, I didn't tell anyone anyway, so we'll just quietly put that under the rug. But I actually did end up getting in and was very excited because I had taken a few years off after my undergraduate degree because I was burnt out and the pandemic happened. And so I was like, if grad school's in my future, it's going to be in the future, not right now. And so when I applied and got in, I was very excited. But then it was about relearning how to do school and how to do school, post the pandemic where everything is online, all of these modalities have changed. And so really having to learn to adapt to new learning environments and also to find a community and find, other ways to be tethered to this city I was very brand new to. And so I just started talking to faculty and professors and being like, hey, this is what I'm really interested in. What do you research? What do you do? How can I be involved? And so reading all of the UNLV newsletters, like no joke, found ways to be involved in campus and to really help build a home here. It's been great.
I was a very heavy overachiever in undergrad, so I really struggled with, I was in 2 microbiology labs, took a full course load, and also was president of a sorority and was in student government. So like my life revolved around school, which was painful. So I wanted really badly to like be a person in grad school, which is probably a bad time to decide that kind of thing, because like it's hard to do things in grad school. But I also decided that like work was going to be work and home was going to be home, and that was something that like I really, really tried to like instill in my very being when I started. And it actually worked. I found myself being like way more successful in grad school because like as the last speaker said, like I was doing less but putting more energy toward the things that I really cared about. So yeah, I think a challenge was just overcoming that kind of initial hurdle of like I have to do everything all of the time, and I don't have to do everything all of the time. Like you could still be successful without having to constantly be involved in 8 different things. It's okay to just focus on what you like doing, and that was something that was very novel for me to kind of understand.
Well, also on that note, and I'll start with you so I'm not going to go Richard this time. As far as time management or work-life balance, right, what are some things that you do to manage your time effectively?
Yeah.
What are some tips that you would give?
So I received this piece of advice when I started my master's degree. I was sitting in a room just like this and someone was on a panel and they said, I treat grad school like a 9-to-5 job. And that like blew my mind because I was like, how can you do that? No, you have to work into the afternoons and late nights and you have to be in lab 40 hours a week. No, you don't. You really don't. I promise you, like, you will be able to get things done during the day if you just work really hard during the day and then take nights off. Like, you deserve nights and weekends off. We are all people. Like, we are people with families and things that we love and critters that we love and, like, you know, all of these things that, like, hobbies maybe, hopefully. But those are all things that, like, you can nourish and care about. And that was something, like, once I conceptualized it as this is something that I do during the day, but at night, that's my time. And it wasn't like that all the time. Like right now I'm writing my dissertation, so I'm definitely working some nights. But it's also okay to be like, this isn't my entire life. This is something that I care about and that I'm going to do, but I still have me and my time and my family that I care about and on the off time. So just treating it like a regular job really kind of changed my perspective on it as opposed to something I had to be constantly doing.
Yeah, I love what you said about nights and weekends. It's so true. And there are times where you get like just absolutely overwhelmed in it, and it comes in waves. Yeah. You know, there are times at the beginning of the semester and the end of the semester where you're at the crest of that wave where it's max anxiety, max stress. You have all these deadlines, but you're gonna get over it. You're gonna get over that crest, and you're gonna hit a nice trough. And that's when you can reevaluate. You can reflect on your experiences, and you can think like, okay, we got through that. What are the lessons that we can learn from that we can take forward to when we hit that next crest in that wave? And it helps make the waves over time gradually become much more manageable, much lower. And so I know we just listened to Dr. Catrone, but the thing that always works for me for like time management is, you know, every Monday I always try to make a work from home day because I know I'm going to be tired, I'm going to be cranky, I'm not going to want to do things, so I want to sit quietly in my home office and work in the private of my house and wear my pajamas. So the first hour of my day I spend on a Monday mapping out my week. I write down for each of my classes, what are the assignments that are due, what articles do I have to read, and then for my GA-ship, I write down, like, what are the tasks that I need to get done this week? And then I plan out for each day. And then when it comes to, like, Wednesday evening or Thursday morning, I reevaluate. How much did I get done? What do I still need to get done? And how can I rearrange the next couple of days so that I can make sure I get the stuff that I need to get done, but also have my Saturday potato day?
I feel that.
And I think Nicole and Stage already provided like really good tips on time management, but I think before we start thinking about like the different tasks, something that my mentor shared with me was the important and urgent. So if you put important and urgent on on a graph, so you have 4 quadrants, and then the top one is high importance, high urgency, I think high importance, low urgency, and so forth. You're able to distribute your tasks that way. So me being here is like very important and very urgent because it's it's happening today. Me spending time with my fiance, that's important but not as urgent. And then for things that are not important or urgent, you could either get rid of them or delegate. So if you're working in a research lab and you're having in-person experiments and you're in charge of scheduling participants, If it's something that's very important and urgent, then maybe that's something that you should do. But if it's something that's important but not urgent, then maybe you could give it to like an undergraduate research assistant. So just some things to think about when you're piling up like on tasks.
All right, next one is about networking. I'm going to start with Sage. Can you give some tips and tricks as far as networking, things that you would recommend as far as cultivating relationships with your peers, professors, etc.?
So especially when you're new to the school, to the classes, to your program, talk to your peers. They're also new and exploring, and you all have different backgrounds and maybe different interests. And so getting together and like making study groups to be able to be like, all right, on Wednesdays we work on these lit reviews that we have to do, and starting that to build that community with your peers. For me, the thing that I always did is always one of the changes that we have from undergrad to a graduate is how your relationship with your professors changes, where as an undergrad you're very much like you have no power in the situation. You are just have to listen to what they say, do your assignments, and just kind of jump through these hoops to complete your program. But in grad school you have this ability to collaborate with your professors and learn about their interests and be able to build these networking relationships. And so understanding your faculty, of your faculty advisor, of your professors, understanding what their research interests are, and you can always communicate with what you're interested in. And if that's not their area of expertise, they know someone who is, and they know the people who are working on new projects. And so always being open in communication about that it's opened me up to this graduate assistant, research assistant position that I'm doing in the fall. So just always maintaining that dialogue and like having just quarterly check-ins with the professors that you're close to, with your faculty advisor, and that always helps keep that stream of opportunities going for sure.
Nicole, you want to go next?
Sure, yeah. So a couple different things. Like I would suggest like joining any clubs or organizations that you feel like you might have an affiliation with. I know I said don't do everything all at once. Like I did end up joining student government. I was president of student government for 3 years. Also a lot. You don't have to do like all of that too. But that also allowed me to meet people outside of my field. And that was really, really important to me because it was this kind of meta level of connection with people that was just outside of the classroom. So I got to know grad students across UNLV that I otherwise would have never met. Like I met Rich through student government, and that was something like if I stayed just in my program, that would have never happened, So it's one of those things where it's like if you join clubs and things like that, you will meet people outside of your regular network. And then the second thing that I would suggest is just do things. Like if you're like, oh man, no one's inviting me to things and none of my classmates want to do things, just be the person that hosts things. We had a tamale night with one of our classmates. There were like 4 people there and we had a blast. So it doesn't have to be a huge thing. You could literally just like get with your classmates and be like, hey, we have a writing assignment due in 2 weeks from now. Do you all want to work on it together at the library? Do you want to go down to the bar over here and hang out? There are a bunch of different things that you could just, have agency to kind of do those things. And for a long time, I was just waiting for people to invite me to things instead of just doing things. And like everyone else is also scared and awkward and alone. So like if you all get together, you're less scared and less awkward and less alone. So you might as well just do things together. We're a very social species as humans, and we should try to, kind of do that with each other. So yeah, just go out there and do things. It's okay. It's fun. And if it doesn't work, that's okay. Do something else. Yeah.
And then to build off what Nicole said, I was president of the Asian Pacific Islander Alliance. So very brand new. We're coming into our 3rd year. And, sometimes it's like when you're seeking community and you don't find community, you have to really build your own community on campus. And sometimes you will build community outside of campus through like your professional organizations. This past weekend I was in APA, I was in Seattle for the American Psychological Association conference. And through that conference, I was able to, build relationships with people outside of UNLV and also across disciplines. And so once you find like your footing here at UNLV, feel free to expand and branch out to other orgs as well.
Fabulous. All right, next question has to do with resources. I personally am a huge advocate of utilizing all of the resources that you're paying for, because you're paying for a lot of them. Can you guys talk about what resources you guys found most helpful? And Nicole.
Sure, yes. I've talked a bit about this with like various people in the room, but counseling and psychological services, like I genuinely benefited from therapy. I was also one of those people that was like, I don't need therapy. And then I went to therapy and I was like, oh, okay, I need therapy. Most people do. We live in a society that is like crushing you from like multiple directions at most times. And like if you don't feel that and you're totally cool, that's awesome. I'm so happy for you. But like if you do sometimes feel like anxious, depressed, alone, like all of those things are very normal feelings to have. And like we have qualified staff members that do walk you through that. So CAPS, Counseling and Psychological Services, it's located over at the Student Wellness Center. They do free counseling. They will give you anywhere from like 6 to 12 sessions. Doesn't matter if you're an undergrad or a grad. UNLV, the practice, also does free group therapy. Well, it's like $10 or $15 for like 4 sessions. Incredibly inexpensive. I've also been to like therapy like outside in like the community, and I think that this is honestly like more functional and it's very convenient. So highly recommend like taking, just advantage of those things. Even if you're like, oh, maybe this isn't for me, but like I do have problems with time management, or I do have problems with like self-image or anything like that. Go for it. It's not fun, but it's helpful for you and helps you grow as a person. Yeah, I'll leave it at that.
You're already paying for those resources.
Yeah, you're already paying for it, so just do it.
Thank you. Sage.
And I'd like to kind of piggyback off of that. As graduate students, we have to have health insurance, and so if you get that through the university, it's actually pretty good. So I go to therapy every week for $20 with a great therapist, and I'm like, thank you. But as far as other campus resources, librarians, they are so underutilized. Just last week, I needed help refining some like lists of keywords in order to find certain research articles, and I was like, please sit down with me. I feel like I'm looking in the wrong database. Like, what is going on? And she was like, okay, so here are the 3 databases that you should use, and let's start searching things. Here are these really helpful tips for organizing your searches, for keeping track of which articles that you've listed. So really, there's a librarian for every discipline. Just like you can look them up, get an hour consultation, and it'll save you so much time.
Sage, who did you meet for the library?
Samantha Godby, she's the education librarian. She's
so good.
A gem.
Yeah, so to piggyback off what Sage said, I was required to meet with the librarian to learn more about APA 7 formatting, and so I was like, well, I already kind of know how to do APA 7 formatting, but I was still required to go, and so I met with Samantha and we talked about like my qualifying activity, and so I was like, hey, like I'm thinking about conducting a systematic review. And so she was like, oh, like what is it on? Like, what have you done so far? And so because of that, like I was able to learn a lot more about like conducting a systematic review, and I was also able to prepare questions for my one-on-one meetings with my mentor, because I didn't know that I had these questions until after meeting Samantha. So reach out to the librarians, and also like just the loan. Like if you're like requesting a book, like instead of paying like $200 for a textbook, you could loan a textbook, and I don't think people utilize the library as often as they should. And another resource would be the Writing Center. A lot of grad students think that the Writing Center is only for undergrads, but if you need help like writing a grant, you could schedule a one-on-one meeting with them, and they could offer you like strategies and like how to format your grant proposal.
And to complement that, yes, interlibrary loan is another great resource that again you guys are all paying for, so don't pay a stupid amount of money for a textbook or an article. Talk to your librarian about ordering it. All right, awesome. Next question has to do with academic success, and Richard, I'm going to go ahead and start with you. What tips do you have for succeeding academically, especially when it comes to staying motivated and managing stress?
So something that my master's mentors told me was that you're going to pass your courses. because you're a grad student. And I think, when they said that, I was like, oh, like, what does that mean? Like, am I just gonna automatically pass? And it's like, no, like, you're in grad school for a reason, because what you've done so far has helped you achieve and pass your courses. And so another way to reframe that narrative is, your courses are meant to be supplemental to your research. My program is research heavy, and so the courses that I'm taking are meant to support me and my milestones, right? So if I'm taking a mixed methods course, typically there's a final paper or project, and that paper or project should be something that will go on my CV as like a publishable like article. Similarly, if you're taking a research methods course, that course should be supplemental to your thesis proposal or defense, right? So when you're thinking about your proposal, you should be thinking about the research design and the method, and that course should help you sort of have an idea of what you want to propose to your committee.
Sage?
So depending on your major, or the program that you're in, your focus, you'll probably have to read quite a few research articles, and you never know when those are going to be important or relevant again. So for each research article that I read, I have a Google Doc that's broken down by like concentration. So I have one that's like program evaluation, and then the second category will be like pedagogy and instruction. And so for every time I write or I read a research article, I write a 1-paragraph synopsis of what that article is about and categorize it, because if I have to go back and write a paper later, or if it ends up being like relevant to research that I want to do, I already have part of that lit review process done by having that kind of just that synopsis ready to go so that I can expand on it.
Thank you.
So let's see, a couple of years ago, I did a couple conference papers on motivation. And when studying motivation, I realized that I have pretty poor motivation to do things, which kind of changed my perspective on it, because I was like, yeah, no, I'm motivated. The thing that I suggest the most is just showing up. Like, there were so many times where I just did not want to go to class. I had like a 4 p.m. class or a 7 p.m. class, and I was like, I want to lay in bed right now and not show up. And every time without fail, after I finished that class, I felt better. So it was really just being like engaged and showing up, and just, because we're all here because I think we want to learn. Like, you have to like learning at least a little bit to come to grad school, and you might forget that over time, but that is the core of what we're doing. We're learning things, we're creating new knowledge, and we're discovering things. And those are the things that I try to hold really dearly to myself whenever I think about it. Because there are so many times where I'm like, I don't want to engage with this paper, I feel like this is useless, I don't want to learn stats. And every single time I've told myself that, it ended up being useful. So it's just one of those things where it's like, sometimes your professors do know better and they do want the best for you. And it's just, and sometimes they don't, but most of the time they're really intelligent people, but like, you'll feel it out over time. Like, you'll be like, maybe I am smart, but just show up. Like, and that's the best advice that I can give. Like, you will learn things in class, you will learn things from the reading, and as much as it sucks in the moment, that helps you kind of build up that resiliency over time, and you'll feel better after you do it, and then it gets easier every time. Yeah.
Good deal. All right, next question is on career planning, and Sage, I'm going to start with you. How have you approached career planning during your time in graduate school, and what advice would you give to those just starting out?
In my undergraduate, I lived off campus, and campus was an hour drive in, because I lived in San Francisco and schools in Oakland. And so I felt really disconnected from campus life, from my peers, because I didn't, I wasn't able, and I worked full time, so I wasn't able to really like have those like college experiences. So when I started grad school, it was definitely my goal to be like, I want to be involved in campus. I want to feel like it's a second home for me. And I also come from a very much kind of liberal arts perspective of I don't want to train for a certain job. I want to develop skill sets and areas of knowledge that are interesting to me that I can carry to different realms. And so for me, it's always not always, but saying yes to as many opportunities as my mental health and schedule will allow, and allowing those new experiences and those lessons that I learned to guide me further along, so gradually narrow into a more narrowed and like focused area of expertise. So like I had said that I started off in data analytics because I love math, I love statistics, I love computer science, I love analyzing data, and that's something you can take anywhere. But ultimately, once I did the teaching graduate certification, which is through the grad academy here at school, I realized, I love data and math and analysis, but I really want to apply this in the setting of education and how we can help understand students and their performance, what affects their performance, and ultimately how we can improve it. And so I switched programs, and so just always being open to to new opportunities, to changing things. Like it's okay to change your program, it's okay to change your major, your concentration. And being open to that change, I think.
I think something for me that changed my perspective on career development is through the grad academy. I took a workshop on building your own brand, and people think that when I'm going on the job market, I should start preparing my materials. And it's no, you could prepare your brand as soon as you start grad school. So something that I have done is I have professional social media accounts. So my personal accounts are private, and what I post on my professional accounts is me attending conferences, me giving panels or talks. And that way, it's also you have a record of what you've done. I mean, you have your CV, but being able to have I guess pictures of what you've done is also very helpful to see your progression towards grad school. And I mean, even when you look up mentors or people in your field, they have some professional websites, and so you could creep around and see what they've done and how they've gotten to where they've gotten. And for me, it's I think as we start going progressing in our graduate program, we sort of develop our own expertise, and because of that, when you go on the job market, you're able to differentiate yourself from the applicant pool. And I think something that I've also done for career planning is just meeting one-on-one with my mentor. I thought I wanted to go into an R2, so R2 are institutions that balance both teaching and research. But after being in my program, I'm thinking about going to an R1, which is research heavy, and then teaching second. So your career plans will change, so be flexible to those changes.
All right, last question, and then we'll open it up to the audience for questions.
I was excited because I'm I don't have career plans. No, I've been in school for so long that not that I forgot to think about it, but I didn't see the light at the end of the tunnel. I got my master's, I'm 3 years into my PhD, so I have 1 year left just writing my dissertation, and I'm I should probably start looking at jobs. Okay. But it's one of those things where I have honestly, I think, hopefully been preparing my entire life for this, because that's what grad school is supposed to do. So I've been looking at things that I want to do and things that I could see myself doing, and then looking at what the requirements are. So you could find jobs everywhere all across the US, outside of the US, and look at their requirements and what they prefer for people to have. And you could build that up over time, because you have time to start that right now. So if they're we want 2 years of teaching experience. Okay, great. You're in a program, you could have 2 years of teaching experience. So just building that up over time to where you could visualize yourself in that job. And then once you get there, it's not stressful to gather up all the requirements. You're building it over a long amount of time instead of a mad dash in your last year. So,
all right,
yeah.
Thank you. So last question, and I'll start this way to this way, so I don't forget anybody.
No, you're good.
Last question, what is one bit of advice you wish you could give to yourself first year?
Be kinder to yourself. Treat yourself as you would treat a good friend. If your friend is oh man, I messed this up and I didn't do as well as I could have, you're not gonna be well, you're stupid and bad and you should drop out. So don't do that to yourself. And I think that's really hard to do because we're often very harsh on ourselves when it comes to meeting our expectations and wanting to perform well. So just a modicum kinder to yourself every single day, and then maybe eventually you'll build up enough like kindness towards yourself that like if you do bad on something or you fail something, that's also okay. Like it's not going to completely derail your life. I really liked what the last speaker said about, just like it's okay to fail things, like you'll be fine. Because I have failed things before and I'm still here and I'm super successful, and that's like hard for me to say still, but viewing myself as a successful person. And all of you are successful because like you got into grad school, you're here, so and that's like a huge hurdle. So that's, just be a little bit kinder to yourself every day, even if it feels weird. And if you're one of those people that are like, I love myself, you're good, you're cool, keep going. Like,
Thank you. Sage? One piece of advice you would give to yourself first year?
I think it would be that you never know when the impression that you make on someone is going to lead you to new opportunities. And so always do your best work with an asterisk. Your best is going to be different every day, and that is okay.
Nice, thank you. Richard?
I think I would tell myself, you're not going to know how much fun you have and how you're going to thrive. Just because I think coming into grad school or like my PhD program, my mentors back home were like, you have to prepare, and this is how we're going to prepare you. And so they over-prepared me coming, into my PhD program. And my first year, I was like, whoa, this is pretty easy. It's pretty smooth sailing right now. I'm thriving. I have a really, great mentor who has invested a lot of time and energy in me, and so I'm going to give that energy back to her and her work. And I think because of that energy that we have as, mentor-mentee and also in the research lab, we're able to work efficiently. We're able to build personal connections and also support each other along the journey. And just this past week, she was like, yeah, we're ready to get you out of here. And I'm like, no, I'm enjoying my time as a doctoral student because I'm able to learn a lot and I'm able to travel when I want to, for research conferences. I'm not teaching, and so I just let my mentor, my professors know, hey, I'm gonna be out this week because I'm presenting my research at a conference. And they really encourage students to attend conferences because 1, you get to network, 2, you're representing UNLV, and 3, it's a lot of fun, right? When you go out and connect with people. And so that would be the one piece of advice I would give me.
Thank you. Excellent advice across the board. Does anybody have any questions for our panelists? Yes.
So, I'm just a pretty stressful person. I stress out a lot. And one of the things I stress out is financial. I do have a graduate assistantship, but I'm also wondering if it would benefit me to also get a part-time job outside of school and how that could be managed time-wise.
Yeah, so this is something that I also struggle with because our grad stipends are across the US, grad stipends are not what they should be. And I think UNLV recognizes that and cares about it and is doing the best that they can, but also making $20,000 a year is not a lot, so just point blank, not a lot of money. You can work 10 hours a week outside of your job. It has to be related to the field that you're in or justified in some way, shape, or form. So there is some bureaucracy kind of that you have to go through in terms of getting forms filled out, all manageable. Those are all things that as long as you talk to the people that you're working with and they understand your struggles, they can help you with it. So if you feel you could also manage a job outside of your lab hours, your work hours, do it. I'm teaching on top of my 20-hour-a-week GA-ship, and hopefully it will be okay. But that's something that's extra income. If you're really struggling financially, there are a couple different grant programs you could apply for. So there are always scholarships and things like that you could apply for. But there's a continuation support grant that the student government does where that's emergency need. There's a retention grant that the graduate college does where if you're in dire financial strait, you have a financial emergency, they can help you. So the goal is to like always just talk to someone about it if you feel like you're going to be struggling and you're like, hey, I think I'm going to drop out financially. No one wants you to drop out. Like everyone wants you to be here and they will work with you to figure out a way to keep you. Yeah, so try not to stress about it too much. I have found that like every time I'm like, I have no money, it still somehow works out to the point where I'm like, okay, if I'm doing everything right and managing my budget, like I don't get to like go out to dinner a ton, I don't get to do like a ton of fun stuff, but I also know that that's a sacrifice I'm making now that will pay off at the end. So hang in there.
Anything our other two panelists want to add?
Yeah, on the note, so there's called the Student Spot, where
Yes.
right down the hallway, and there's also monthly exchanges where you can pick up canned goods, foods on campus. So there's definitely ways to pick up household stuff and like food to bring home that is like free, no questions asked here on campus. So definitely keep in mind with that. But also if you have if you want to have a part-time job outside of the university and you have a GA-ship, you could actually risk losing your GA-ship if you're doing like 20 hours a week at like, some like at Starbucks, for example. Because the point of a GA-ship is that you are given a stipend, a monthly stipend, and an easy work schedule so that you can focus on your studies. And so, yeah, finding other small opportunities on campus where you can give in those extra 10 hours to help boost your, your income and stuff like that. So it's just very important. Read your graduate student handbooks. I cannot emphasize it enough.
Oh, I did not know you could lose it just by doing like a part-time job outside.
Yeah.
Just to check if I understood, you are advising us to don't pay for handbooks and to hand on the library, is that? I'm not sure if I understood correctly.
So there's a graduate student handbook, which is for the general rules, in procedures and bureaucracy and everything for being a graduate student here at the university. And then there's also your graduate assistant handbook, which outlines all of those rules. So they're not terribly long. I would definitely recommend reviewing them. They're in your new student orientation modules on Web Campus, but yeah, so it's things to think about for sure.
Okay.
Yeah. And then in terms of textbooks and things like that, most of them you can rent from the library. You could also just ask your professor, because a lot of the things that you read in courses are going to be articles that you could download online through the interlibrary loan, all of that kind of stuff too. So if they're like, hey, you need to buy this $300 textbook, be like, but do I really? It's okay to just ask, and just be like, hey, I'm going to be real with you, I don't have that money. And usually people could find a way around it. Sites online, you could find them, library, things like that. Pirate. No, don't do that.
And then I think something to know is that the GA-ship is only a 9-month contract, and so I would prepare for the summer months. My department is really good at helping students secure funding, so teaching over the summer. But if your department is limited in funding or does not offer a lot of courses over the summer, I would plan early spring. That's when a lot of places are hiring for the for the summer season. So just something to think about as spring hits.
Handshake will be your best friend.
Yeah. UNLV Handshake, UNLV Career Services, all of them want you to have a job. So.
Any other questions for our panelists? Comments, concerns, hopes, dreams, fears?
Fears.
Fears? All the fears, yes.
Just in terms of the working relationship with faculty, how you address them. So I mean, as a background to that, I'm coming back to academia after 14 years in corporate America, and K through 12 and undergrad, you address your professor or your teacher as Mr. or Mrs. But then you get to the corporate world, even though you're wearing shirt and tie every day, nobody's addressing anybody by Mr. Mrs.
Yeah.
My boss's boss was Jeff. So when I go in to meet my advisor for the first time, is it hey, Tim, or is it Dr. So-and-so? How do I make that good first impression?
Yeah, I have always relied upon their email signature or what's listed on the website. And I always start off with doctor or professor if they have doctor or professor listed anywhere. I usually then wait for them to say, no, you could call me John or you could call me Kate. you know, and once you kind of hear that phrase, that's when I'm like, okay, great, that means that it's okay for me to be cordial with you. Because I've had both, where some professors are totally okay with you just first name basis, and then some faculty members, and I've had this explained to me too, where they're like, hey, I worked really hard for my degree, and like I've had undergraduates disrespect me before, so I'm gonna have people call me doctor in a formal setting, and then in an informal setting, you could call me by my first name. So just go off of what they call you, but when you're walking in, Dr. So-and-so. Yeah. It's awkward, but worth it. Yeah.
And then sometimes like the opposite happens where you're like emailing someone or like a student and they're like, oh, like Dr. So-and-so. I'm like, I'm not a doctor.
Oh, I just let it slide.
Yeah, I'm like,
cool.
oh, like, it's just rich for now.
Yeah.
Soon to be doctor.
Yeah. I'm like, yeah.
Good deal. Any other questions? Yes.
Have you ever felt imposter syndrome, and what do you remind yourself every time you're in that dark space?
Let's go first.
Yes, imposter syndrome that is a very special kind of anxiety, and for me, part of what has lessened it over my first year of graduate studies is just sitting with it. So it's like when I'm feeling really overwhelmed and stressed out and thinking, you know, when I have to sit down and write a paper and I'm like, I don't know anything, I shouldn't be here, I'm just faking it, and just sitting with that feeling and being like, okay, I'm feeling a lot of tension, I'm feeling really anxious, and it's coming out this way, but what's really behind it? And it's the fact that, like, you know, I don't know certain things in the lexicon to use. Okay, well, I can solve that. That's just a Google search. You know, it's looking beyond the imposter syndrome to be like, why is it coming out like this? And a lot of that time, it's, you know, things that we can address. It's illuminating an area of knowledge that you feel that you have gaps in, and you can address that. And so it's sitting with it, working through it, because every time it comes up and you've sat with it and you've reflected on it, it'll be a little bit less.
Yeah, there is let's see, my second year of my master's program, I actually ended up getting a NASA grant. And when I got the email, I was like, oh, this wasn't meant for me. There's no way they actually gave it to me. It must be some huge mistake. Like, being okay with, like, just people thinking that you're smart. Like, because you are. You absolutely are. You know, and that's something that, like, I still struggle with to this day. But also talking to people outside of grad school, because, like, talking to your friends and family who aren't in grad school, they're going to be like, oh my gosh, you're doing such amazing things. And I think we often forget that when we're surrounded by people who are also smart. But, like, at the end of the day, nobody knows what they're doing. Like, I still don't know what I'm doing. Like, most of us, like, we are faking it till you make it. You know, and that's, like, honestly, think about that. Because, like, if you do something over and over and over again, like, you eventually just build up the habit where you kind of know things over time. So even if it feels like you know nothing, you do. You already know a bunch of stuff. Like, everyone here knows a bunch of stuff about, like, really specific things. And, like, even if you're like, oh, they shouldn't have let me into this program. They did. You're in. It happened. You're here. And you'll be great. Yeah.
I think for me last semester, I texted my mentors and I was like, hey, like, UNLV Student Rec is having a triathlon. We should sign up for it. And so we sign up for it, and the day comes, and I'm supposed to run the 5K or the 3K. And I'm sitting in my car, and I'm like, I feel sick to my stomach, and I text my mentors, and I was like, Gloria, I feel so anxious. I feel like throwing up. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is the first time I'm having physical symptoms of imposter syndrome. And so she was like, oh, like, you're gonna do great. Like, I'm gonna be there after your race. And so, but Rachel's already there. So then I walked to the starting line, and like my other mentor, Rachel's there. I was like, Rachel, like, I feel like throwing up. And she's like, no, like, you're gonna do great. I'm like, I feel really anxious. She's like, that's good that you feel anxious, because that means that you care about this, and, you know, you prepared for this, and so you're gonna do great. And so I ran the 3K. We finished the non-competitive in first place. I didn't know we got medals for non-competitive, but we won first place for non-competitive. And I think after that, you know, triathlon, I was like, whoa, like, I can't do this. I think it was just in my head, where I was feeling so anxious that, like, I was physically feeling sick. And so I think after doing something for the first time and knowing that you can overcome it, helps with the imposter syndrome. So.
And it's totally okay to ask for validation from people if you feel like you need it.
Yes. You could email me and I'll tell you you're doing great. I'm like, no matter what it is, you're doing great.
Any other questions for our panelists?
One question.
Yes.
So, have any of you had the experience of having a certain research topic that you're interested in that is very broad? And if so, how did you go about narrowing down what you want to do for the research?
Yes, all the time. And I, like, all the time. And that's something where I'm like, I come in with a really, really big idea. And this is what faculty members are really good at. So sitting down with a faculty member that you trust, whether that's your advisor or a faculty member of a class that you've taken, and just being like, how do I turn this into a tangible project? And understanding that you cannot tackle the entire thing, but you could tackle a very important small part of it that contributes to the overall thing. You know, so I've had to spend a lot of time kind of like narrowing down the scope of what I want to do to a very specific kind of thing that's manageable to do in 3 to 4 years. You know, and that's something that I think is difficult, especially when you have big ideas, because I'm like, oh, I want to do all of it all the time. But it's okay to also contribute a very small part of it, and that is what you're here to learn. You know, so I think starting off with those interests in mind and then having someone else help you narrow it down, whether that's an advisor, professor, anything like that, even other grad students in your program. You could ask them, hey, what have you done for XYZ and how can I turn this into an actual research project? Yeah, so totally okay to start off that way. Yeah, you're good.
Yeah. I think my main interest in research is mathematics self-efficacy and math anxiety for students, and which is broad and huge, and there are so many different avenues, but really like setting aside time for when maybe you're at that kind of low point in your semester and you maybe have a few extra hours in the week, and just review a lot of the research literature that is out there, and that helps you to find areas that have been underexplored or not explored at all, or maybe something that has been done but hasn't been done recently. And so you can be able to use that as inspiration in order to find your niche and where you want to go. And then also like take a research methods class. It can just be so helpful to understand the research design process, and that can help you narrow down what it is that you exactly want to focus on studying.
So my research broadly encompasses race and racism, and so we know that racism impacts every aspect of our lives. And so because the topic is so broad, my mentor's research focuses on racial microaggressions. So then I was like, okay, well, you know, I'm interested in studying racism, and my mentor's background is in racial microaggressions. So then I'll study that. But racial microaggressions can occur in the workplace, and you know, in the doctor's office, anywhere and everywhere. So then I was like, well, you know, I'm a college student right now, so why don't I study racial microaggressions in education? And then when it came to the population, I was like, did I want to study broadly just people of color or Asian Americans? And so I was able to narrow it down by topic, and then my mentor's expertise, and then also the population, because I have personal connections to Asian Americans, and there are certain things that haven't been found in the literature, and so that's where my niche is in.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from folks in the audience? Are we able to see the chat, Sage, to see if anybody...
Nothing. Chat.
Going once? Going twice? All right, well, thank you to our panelists. And that concludes today's bridge. We will be meeting back tomorrow. If you're going to be attending in person tomorrow, we're feeding you every day. You've bought
That's so
too
nice.
much food, so on your way out, please definitely take a plate.